Welcome to the Mop-Up, where we break down Commander gameplay and discuss lessons learned along the way. We'll talk about some of our own gameplay, general mechanics, and our overall experience playing Commander.
And today we thought
Charmander.
Charmander, our special guest. You didn't realize I just got a little Charmander plushie today for my birthday gift from Olive. So,
Right, your birthday's coming up, isn't it?
Yeah, it's on the 20th, tomorrow.
20th.
As you know, we don't record
Remember
this the day of. It's recorded in the past. We just spoiled.
Yeah,
our
20th of what
secrets.
month? We'll never know.
We'll never know.
Anyways, what are we talking about today?
Well, we thought it would be interesting because we were looking at kind of like the gameplay from, oh my gosh, I don't think I can remember how to say it. Aaron told me today, Biblo? Did I do it right this time?
Perfect.
Oh, thank God.
That's
From that game. And I don't know. I was thinking it was interesting because there was a lot of new cards to us at the time that we recorded that, because I think the Lord of the Rings set had maybe been out for about a month, and then Commander Masters had just dropped. And so there was also, I think, like Eldraine spoilers that were like happening as well. So there was just like information overload. And we were all kind of like looking at our deck list of like basically either stuff from like All Will Be One, like Aftermath kind of stuff, March of the Machines, and then we're like, oh my gosh, here's all these Lord of the Ring cards that we're really excited to build around, and then they're like, here's all this Commander Master stuff. So when we were like going through the pod, I think there was like a couple of like mistriggers or misplays that happened, but part of that I think was just because it was like so many new cards that we were still learning how they kind of worked and processing that information. So I thought it'd be interesting to kind of like talk about like as these new sets continue to drop, we get a lot of new stuff, whether it's like, you know, Universes Beyond or sets that are just part of like the normal kind of standard rotation. Like how, from, you know, either one of our perspectives, like when we see new cards, how do we know that we're going to slot them in, or like what necessarily inspires us to build a deck around them? And if, you know, if you have any suggestions here, Ken, too, for like what
you bet.
you like to do.
So it seems fitting that we talk about this game because I played Rocco in our last gameplay video, and watching that over, that deck is not the deck it is now.
Yeah,
I feel like certain decks. Right, in the short time span, the deck has changed so much, and that's because a lot of these decks, you know, I think we both to an extent build a bit newer as far as new commanders.
Yeah,
a lot of these commanders are getting a lot of support every new set. Right, it's like I think Rocco and I have a Nashi, both from Aftermath.
Wasn't there also Doctor Who that got sprinkled in as well around that time?
Oh yeah,
spoilers
there's
for that?
That as well.
That was a lot.
Yeah, so it's, you know, these decks are getting a lot of support, and that's exciting and great, and it feels like it's kind of like, you know, you hit the gold mine when it comes to building a new deck, but all of a sudden there's all this new support and exciting stuff happening around them. But at the same time, it's a lot, and narrowing down 100 cards to begin with in a deck can be daunting and overwhelming. So when you get these new cards coming in and kind of being like must-haves, or not even like cards that get you excited about your deck, you kind of have a system, or have to figure out a way to, you know, see if you can slot them in and see where they belong, if they belong. So, like for my experience, I'm a sucker for a system, and I very much have my own personal system I use when it comes to testing whether or not a new card belongs in a deck. So I have here, you won't be able to see anything, but just for the sake of showing, you can see here I have all my decks clearly put out on my phone.
What app is that?
Everything. This is ManaBox, not sponsored. Oh my God, please sponsor us. I love it.
Or Moxio.
Anyways, yeah, we'll take any card
any
organizing
sponsor.
app. Oh. Thank you. I like this ManaBox just because it's app-based, and I spend a lot more time on my phone than I do sitting at my computer. But when a new set comes out, you know, spoiler season happens. It's kind of like a community thing where we sit and we comb over the new spoilers, we discuss, we overreact.
But what's like a card that you're like, how do you know, like, this is something, like, if you're looking at it, like, inspires you? Like, because I know you have your data sheets and stuff, but like boring. But like when you see a card, are you like, holy, like this is something I need? Like what just jumps out to you that way?
So I will use the example Displaced Dinosaurs that came out in the Doctor Who Commander set. It's a stupid 7 mana creature, I believe. I think it's 7 mana. Say new cards.
It's like 7/7.
Anytime a non-land permanent. Hold on, let me bring it up so I get it right.
And we'll display it here as well.
Yes. Okay, I have it here. 7 mana dinosaur. As a historic spell enters the battlefield under your control, it becomes a 7/7 dinosaur creature in addition to its other types. Just like such a stupid card to put in a food deck. And I know I'm not the first one to think of this, right? But just
what makes
silliness.
it stupid? Like, what's a historic spell to begin with? Because you got to explain it.
Well,
Maybe
historic
people
spell,
don't know.
yes. Historic spell is anything that's a legendary spell, a artifact, or a saga. Those are all historic. So essentially, anytime something comes in, it is a 7/7 dinosaur. If you cast a legendary creature, it's a 7/7 dinosaur. You cast a saga, it's a 7/7 dinosaur. You create a food token, and I'll tell you, Rocco makes a lot of food tokens. We all saw it in the episode. They just become 7/7 dinos. And I was not the one who came up with this, but the idea that you're creating dinosaur chicken nuggets is just so pure that it was a must. I saw that card and I was like, this is silly, and this belongs in my Rocco food deck. So a card like that is just a matter of, okay, I know I want it. What do I cut out for it? I usually, as a rule of thumb, try and cut out something similar, something that is in similar mana values, similar card types, so I'm not kind of accidentally skewing off my, I'm not going to cut a piece of removal for something that makes dinosaurs, right? So
yeah. So what I'm hearing is basically like, if it introduces new value that maybe something else isn't, like specifically here we're looking at kind of like food synergies, so like something related to food tokens or maybe even like historic synergies, and looking at that, this potentially is a win con, or at least finding another way to utilize food tokens so that you can create bodies and attack or block or maybe even sacrifice that for other value. So maybe like a way to frame that too is like if you have like a card draw slot, right? Like, because how I usually build a deck is I have like, here's my X amount of card draw that I want an X amount of ramp, and I want an X amount of removal. And if there's a new card that like comes up that has some sort of like effect that could influence one of those slots that maybe fits into the overall synergy of the deck, that maybe I'll look at something, it's like, is this just kind of like a nice placement holder because I didn't have better options, but now this one's a better option? Or is it like a fun thing if I have like a typal movement going on in my like overall synergies of like swapping and stuff that way? Would you say that's kind of similar to like what you were describing there?
I would even say throw that analytics and all the spreadsheets. We're going to make it even simpler.
Okay.
If you see a new card, it's spoiled, you just come across it. If it makes you immediately think of a deck of yours that already exists, consider it, right? When I saw that card, I was like, that's a silly Rocco card. Or if there's a new Nashi card, right? When you see a card, your mindset will automatically put it in, try and find a place for it. And if it comes up and it's like this belongs in this deck, then I would say give it a try, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's no hurt in that, right? And the worst case scenario, you just go back to whatever you had before.
Yeah.
So
I think that's something with like a lot of newer players that I talk to about like deck building, because they find a card and they're super excited about it and they're like, this thing could do this, and I'm like, yeah, it can. And then they're like, should I add it? I'm like, do you like the card? And they're like, yeah. Then I'm like, try it out. Like, if the worst thing that's going to happen is maybe it doesn't do as well. and you just swap it out for whatever other card you had or a different card that has better synergy. But I always think like if you're super excited about something, like try it out, because at the end of the day, Commander is supposed to be about like fun, and if a new card to you is fun and doesn't necessarily have to be the most optimized best thing, and yeah, some people, to them, like the way that they have fun with Commander is building the most optimized deck possible, and that's great. But I also think like don't be afraid to experiment, because maybe someone will tell you something's a bad card or it's not as optimized, but then it turns out having some crazy synergy that no one knew could possibly happen. So,
and also in the instance of talking about new cards, is the nice thing is we don't have the data on these cards. These are new cards that have never been played before, so it's really just a free ground to get to play out and try something new, right? It's not a situation where you're picking the card that's tried and true. We're all kind of in this new playing field, and we all get to have our own experience with these cards. And I think that's exciting, because a lot of cards have their kind of place or their reputation, and these cards are just brand new, up for grabs. Nobody's played with them.
Yeah.
Give it a whirl.
There's another kind of interesting flip side to this, though, too. Like, let's say you have an incredibly optimized deck. Like, I would say my Olinda deck is probably as optimized as I could make it without pushing it to, like, higher power to CDH. And I like it at that level. I don't want it to go higher than that. So when I'm looking at, like, swaps, I have to be kind of conscientious of, like, is this worth it to, like, is this going to bump it up too high? Or is it going to like lower it than what I intend? And I would be okay if it brings the power level lower than it is going higher. But because it is such like an optimized deck, I'm a lot more strict about what I swap in for stuff. And so like if I put a card in, it has to be like S tier for that deck. And again, not so S tier that it's then going to bump it to out of the like mid power like level. And same with Myrel as well. Yeah.
Oh, Myrel. Yeah, the thing is also like there is no that's a history of being beat by that deck. The other thing too is you don't have to try and fit in every new card, every new set into your deck. Mm-hmm. It's completely up to you. If something strikes your fancy, great, try it out. Otherwise, like there's no obligation. Putting all new cards in constantly is not going to make your deck the best it can be. Sometimes the formula you create is exactly what it needs, and it's okay to be like, I like it, but I'm going to stick with what I have. So I think that's also a very important thing to remember.
I think what was really interesting for me, because I love vampires, Orzhov was like the first color combo that I like, oh, this like really clicks for me. I love that I feel like I have a lot of answers to everything. And so this new, like ton of new vampires dropped, and I was like, oh, this would be really cool for Olinda. But is this like better than what I have? And then I'm like, but I want to still play with these cards, but I don't really want to change my Olinda deck. So then that also could be like an opportunity for you to kind of challenge yourself in a different way, because like maybe you don't use all like your best staples that are super expensive for this other build that you do. And by kind of like not always putting like, 1,000 Rhystic Studies in every deck, or you know what I mean, like just getting a lot of copies of stuff. Maybe this is your opportunity to take like, okay, I'm going to build another vampire deck. I might have some of the cheaper staples that are like easy to add into that deck, but maybe this is my opportunity to try building around some of these new cards and see like what kind of synergies come together from that. So then that way, like, I don't know, you kind of mix up like your play styles, and it doesn't feel like you're playing the same deck over and over again, so especially if you're in the same color combo.
And I think we can do a whole other episode talking about like deciding when to build a new deck or how to build a new deck. But, at the end of the day, it's just fun. And a lot of people, it's the brewing is kind of the less fun part of it, and they're all about the playing. Then maybe this information is no use to you. But like for the people who love building more, it's just at the end of the day, it's just a game we get to play, and we get to kind of take the parts we enjoy of it. And and the important thing is not to get overwhelmed or feel kind of like I'm losing track of all this or I'm falling behind, because things are going to update, things are going to change, but it's not, not your job to keep up. It's not like you have to take a quiz at the end of every month of all the new cards. Like, don't let that kind of hinder your experience or hinder your deck building or your existing decks. It's just all fun. It's just cardboard.
Yeah, 100% agree with you on that. I think like it can be hard to feel like maybe like you are falling out of the loop on certain things because there are like really interesting cards, like, but at the same time, like to your point, like, you know, maybe it's a good card, but it doesn't have to be in every single deck, or maybe it can be on like your, you know, more optimized decks, but then your other ones you can kind of experiment around with like other things. One of my favorite things to do though is I get an idea for a deck and I try to look at the cards that like I already own and see what I could build around, because sometimes that also challenges you, because like not only is it like good to save budget wise, but also like I'm forcing myself to play with like different cards now, because like maybe I didn't have an extra copy of like my favorite board wipe, or I didn't have an extra copy of like my favorite like draw spell, but looking over Endless Bulk, there's this weird card I've seen like once like 2 years ago and never thought about again, but now I'm gonna try it out, and actually this was a really strong card. And that's sometimes like my favorite decks too. Like my Emoti one is basically like my high power deck that I felt too guilty with, like all these cards that I was like, you know, Vorinclex of Ceaseless Hunger is so pretty, but like I can't play with this. And like at least for me, like I don't really feel like it's a mid power card, because it's just a, you know, kind of Staxy effect that makes people sad. So I don't play that in mid power pods. But in Emoti, I was like, let me take all these broken cards, put them in a pile, and okay, this is very broken and fun.
I call that, I'm working on my own, I call that my villain deck. When it's just all these nasty monsters, but that's the thing, that's the flavor of it. So
I love it.
Yeah.
Wait, who's the commander for your villain?
It's gonna be Rona.
Love it.
The newest Rona, the looter Rona.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just gonna be filled with nasties, and I'm so excited.
They're super fun. The one that flips, right?
Yep.
Yeah, they're super spicy. I'm glad that we're gonna have all these cards posted here. Hopefully that gives people ideas about their own villains. Oh man. Well, I feel like we could probably go on and on for days about this topic. It's like maybe we just make several episodes at this point. But I hope this is like interesting for those of you like listening right now, because I would really be curious, like, you know, how you've been processing the new sets, and like if you've been updating your decks a lot, or how many even new commanders that you've been building around as well.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So like leave us a comment, let us know how you're keeping up, if you're keeping up, and like Ash said, what new cards have you excited for your decks? Because I think there's always something new and exciting, and it's fun to kind of share, because a lot of these things we don't always see.
Yeah.
But also, if you could like and subscribe.
Like and describe. For Charmander.
Bring it around full circle.
Yes. All right, friends. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. It's always lovely. And bye.
Bye.